Hey, what's up, party people? It's your old pal F, and welcome to. I'm going to call this my first official live stream, my first official live stream, because the others were kind of practice run. But today, on this edition of F Bombs, I have shown up ready to work. I literally have. Here's cup of coffee number one. Hey, there's two people in the chat already. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Yes, F is for Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. That was from BTD Cartoons. Happy Friday. Refuel Flames of Something. Happy Friday to you. Thank you for showing up. By the way, here's a problem with the chat, and I'm going to try and alleviate this as this live stream goes on. My eyesight is really bad, so I have to kind of pick. Oh, hello, Addison Powers. It looks like. So these are bifocals, and I have to do this in order to kind of read the chat. So everyone, please just bear with me. I'm an old man. BD, I would love nothing more than to come visit New York City. Many people don't know this. I lived for 10 years in New York City. My daughter was born there. My daughter is officially a Brooklynite. Yeah, we lived for 10 years in New York after both my wife and I had said we've kind of had enough of Los Angeles. We both, by that time in my career, I'd kind of become known as the pilot guy. So people were mostly having me storyboard and direct pilots from my home. So we packed up and we moved from Los Angeles to New York because my wife is from Los Angeles. So goodness knows she had had enough of it. I had been there for about 15 years and I had had enough of it. Wow, someone in the chat all the way from China. Well, thank you for either showing up, waking up, whatever. Very, very grateful to have you here. Anyway, we moved from LA to New York. I had literally just wrapped up storyboarding my part of the Rick and Morty pilot. And it's funny, I'd wrapped that up. We packed everything up. We literally drove across the country to live in New York. And by the time we got to New York, posters for Rick and Morty were already up like everywhere. And I'm just like, oh, wow. Oh, my gosh. They fast tracked this, which was awesome because I knew when I started boarding Rick and Morty that it was going to be a big show. So anyway, this is how I'm going to try and alleviate my problem with reading the chat. I'm going to open up in my phone and I'm going to join the chat on one of the other YouTube channels that I have. By the way, in case you're ever interested, I do have another channel called Fountain Tutorials or words to that effect. So if you ever want to peek into my drawing tips or anything like that, then feel free to check that out. But the channel that you're on now, this is the channel where I put all of my blood, sweat, and tears. Not only where I put all of my blood, sweat, and tears, but where my tireless crews of animation and production crews are constantly working around the clock for free to make new original free cartoons just for you. And in fact, oh good, yeah, there we go. I'm wow, I'm looking at my own face live, but see now this does make it much easier for me to read the chat. Oh, you're from Westchester, like an hour outside of New York City. Well, cool. Are you in Westchester now? Or anyway, to everyone who has joined the chat, thank you for being here. This is an auspicious occasion. Is auspicious the word I'm looking for? I don't know. But what's unique about this edition of F Bombs is I have actually prepared for this, which is why I'm frankly a little bit nervous. I'm usually not nervous at all when I make these F bombs because I frankly don't put a ton of work into them. Part of my branding for those episodes is I just kind of show up and talk about whatever's on my mind. This one, I specifically wanted to, oh, I don't know, actually put some prep in on, um, because I sort of teased the fact that we're doing a cartoon called Nightmare Hunters on social media, and oh my gosh, people went insane. I mean, for someone like me, like I'm not famous, but there are people who know of me in animation circles, so it's not like anything I ever do ever like blows up, but for someone with a very sort of mid-level sized account, when I posted about Nightmare Hunters, it sort of blew up, and because it's a it's a story and it's a cartoon that I created that is very near and dear to my heart. And by the way, I would love to get some support for it. I thought I would do this live stream and kind of go into the lore of it because it is really fairly interesting, especially for those who are either already in the animation industry, those who hope to be in the animation industry, those who are thinking about doing independent cartoons, or for those who just like the whole kind of making of stuff. And I happen to be one of those people. Um, I've always loved to sort of know, how the sausage is made and all that sort of stuff. When I was a kid, see, and again, things were so different back then because we had three TV networks, and that was kind of it. And my whole thing at the time was Star Wars, and every time a new Star Wars movie would come out, they'd do a TV special. Um, and I remember one of them was hosted by Robin Williams, which was awesome. I think they chose him because at the time he was playing Mork from Mork, an alien from space. And it was amazing. And I can't remember if that was for Star Wars or The Empire Strikes Back, but it was absolutely amazing. Someone is asking in the chat, have I heard of Cuphead? Have I heard of Cuphead? Heck yeah, I've heard of Cuphead. I haven't played the game because it looks way too hard. Um, when it comes to gaming, I love my games, and I'm a creature of habit when it comes to my games. I literally just downloaded Fortnite the other day, and I've finally decided to give in to all the pressure and give Fortnite a whirl. But here's the thing: I'm not very good. I'm truly not very good, and Cuphead looks really hard. Fun fact, though, when it comes to Cuphead, first of all, the second I saw it come out, I'm like, oh, this is brilliant. This is just absolute genius. I'm just happy that somebody did it. And moreover, a good friend of mine, Dave Wasson, directed the Cuphead show. Dave Wasson um, and I were colleagues back at Nickelodeon. We both were doing shorts for the Oh Yeah cartoon show. And beyond that, we wound up working together at Six Point Harness Animation on a show that nobody watched. And we had talked about doing our own show together. We had had some ideas that we had tossed around. Really great guy. Well, and he did the more recent sort of Mickey Mouse shows for Disney that go all old school in their designs, but give them a tiny bit of a modern sort of twist. They're just really well done, and so I have a ton of respect for him. Um, so yeah. Anyway, getting back to why we're here. Why we're here is to discuss Nightmare Hunters, which is a pilot that we're doing here at Fountains Pen Cartoons. So let me get something out of the way. If you're watching this, please, 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 when you're done watching this, check out the other content on this channel. If you like cartoons, we got new original free cartoons that my crews of animators and production crews, voice talent, musicians, editors, everybody, they work around the clock tirelessly for zero money to make these brand new cartoons for you. And right now, all we're asking in return are your eyeballs. Please just watch them and help spread the word. Because that's we're all right now. We're all kind of doing it for the love of the craft, and that kind of takes me back to where I was going before. I'm not that famous, people have been asking me before, well, why aren't you doing crowdfunding? Why aren't you doing, a Kickstarter campaign? Blah 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 blah. I don't frankly believe that I have enough mojo behind me to warrant something like that. Um, and this whole me getting into indie animation thing, it was kind of a big experiment to begin with. Because I knew right away how much I could commit to it and how much I couldn't. Because the most important thing I do with my life is I'm a dad, so I couldn't take any time away that I spend being a dad. So my role would have to be one strictly of producer. That is to say, I would creatively coordinate everything, but I couldn't do all the other stuff. Now, fortunately, when I put the word out that I was going to be doing this, a whole bunch of other people came out of the woodwork and they're like, "Yes, yes, yes, we want to join. We want to join." And so I've got people who do all that stuff, and I've also I've got all these wonderfully talented, undiscovered artists working for me now as well. I shouldn't say working, but working with me. We are collaborating together. Um, but kind of the idea behind it is because I can't pay anybody, my way of sort of compensating everybody for being part of the what we call the program, the Fountains Pen Productions program, is that I also act as a mentor. That is to say, I help teach what I know about the process of animation and pass it along to the people who are part of the program. And I got to say, I didn't know if it was going to work or not. I didn't know if it was going to be successful or not. I really didn't know how any of this was going to go. But one thing I absolutely could not have predicted was just how much fun it was going to be. Like everybody seems to be having just an absolute blast, and people have made friends, people have made connections, people have gotten work as the result of being at least partially as a result of gaining experience in the program. So for that reason, I'm very, very proud of it, and it's for that that I ask for your support. And again, when I say support at this point, I'm only talking about watch our stuff. And if you like it, give a like, share, subscribe, and even more importantly, most important of all, spread the word. Tell your friends. Share our links in social media. Do all the things. Get the word out that we're here and we're doing stuff. Well, and that reminds me, I'm going to make a note of this. Or maybe someone in the chat. Help me remember to make big secret announcement at the end. I, in fact, have a big secret announcement for the end of this. So that I have not put out there yet in any capacity. So if we get to the end and I haven't done this yet, somebody in the chat, please remind me to do so. So anyway, I was getting back to how not famous I am. I'm not particularly famous. Like I'm friends with people who big cartoon fans know their names. You got your Rob Renzetti, you've got your Jonan Vasquez, you've got Jorge Gutierrez. There are a handful of friends of mine who are famous, and then there are people I'm acquainted with who are famous. You've got your Butch Hartmans, and then you've got other people, that again I've worked with in the past that I'm still friendly with, but I'm not them. I've kind of made my thank you, Addison, for already reminding me to do the big announcement. I don't have the kind of name recognition that those people do. I've made a career out of being the guy behind the guy, So it's not like you hear the name John Fountain and automatically, your name goes to the Fairly Odd Parents or Invader Zim or My Life as a Teenage Robot or any of those other things. It doesn't help the fact either that I've started going by just F. People call my friends now just call me F, and I've kind of embraced it, and so I've reduced myself to a single letter. So I don't have the kind of fame that I feel as though can get me to, if I start a Kickstarter campaign or something like that, I'm just pretty certain people are going to be like, who is this old guy and why should we care? And that's the other thing. Other people have run, and by the way, I am all for everybody else doing it that way. Other people have run successful campaigns because they've had some sort of, oh, this person worked on another big popular show that was out very recently. This person did that. I've been pretty out of the game for a while. Like I said, the last sort of big major thing that I worked on was Rick and Morty, and that was a while ago. So again, I didn't want to start this indie studio and go, hey everybody, remember that one episode of The Fairly Odd Parents where the Sphinx comes to life and it was really cool? Well, based on that, give me your money. And the other problem with that too is the second you ask people to hand over money, you're kind of beholden to them and you have to answer to them. And we have to, I would feel quite rightly obligated to, run things according to how they want it to go. And I wanted this first go round of animated pilots and shorts and quick little films. I wanted to go with absolutely no attachments, and the other sort of advantageous part about that is, um, again at Fountains Pen Cartoons, we don't pay anybody, but we also we don't have deadlines. We don't, we have goals that we set, but no one's going to get yelled at if you don't meet your deadline. And there's no suits to answer to. There's just it's just us and our creativity, and that's what we're trying now. We sort of cosplay like we're a studio because the whole point is let's all learn together how the studio system works, so that the real goal of Fountains Pen Productions is to prepare people for a career in animation, so that when hopefully they rise in the ranks and they someday get a job in the animation industry, the pipeline process will not seem that outrageous to them, which it can if you've never done it before. um, so anyway, that's why I haven't done this. Now, one of the other things I did when I started this up was I said, okay, we're going to do this. But for the first big round of pilots and shorts, we're going to do it all based on stuff that I've created. Now, I know that sounds incredibly arrogant, and I get it. Of course, it sounds arrogant. The reason we're doing that is because the minute you start messing with other people's creations, you get to have questions about, well, who owns this much of it and who has the distribution rights? And suddenly it becomes a whole legal quagmire that I did not have the bandwidth, and we didn't have the staff to accommodate it. Now we are getting to that point. We are, without revealing too much, in the 3 years of its existence, Fountains Pen Productions has grown exponentially, and we are getting good at what we're doing. So we are, the eventual goal is to become a, an incubator program where people can bring in their new original ideas, and we would produce them and we would partner up and do all these things. But I didn't want to mess with anybody else's work until I knew that we would get it right. And so there was a strict rule that we're only doing stuff that I created, because if anything is going to be the sacrificial lamb, I want it to be my stuff. Because when it comes to my career in animation, I don't feel as though I have anything left to prove. I feel as though, I sold 8 different shows when I lived in LA. None of them became series, but I sold 8 different shows. Two of them actually came very, very close to getting picked up as series, but this being one of them actually. And several more, got very well received. But if you do any amount of research into how, TV and animation, cartoon, show business in general works, you will hear the same story that, getting a show actually broadcast and actually on the air and actually getting it over that finish line, it is a long slog to get there. And it is a lot of, and that's part of what I'm going to go into today. So please stick around. Um, and by the way, chat, first of all, thank you everyone for being there. For whatever reason, I'm having a fairly decent time being able to read the chat, even with my bad eyesight. So if you have questions, feel free to shout them out in there. So that's why Fountains Pen exists the way it does now. We're sort of getting our feet wet, our hands dirty, throw in whatever other metaphors you want, on a handful of things that I created, and we're using this as our time to sort of make mistakes and mess things up and get our footing and figure everything out. And um, thus far, I got to say, it's been working really well. We have, what we call our pilots programs. That is, say, the longer format stuff that we're doing. That's anywhere from like 3 to 6 minutes long. And then we do our little what we call found tunes, which are just super quick, super short, just gags that we do. So far, the three main pilots that we've done are Flotchy, Notchy, and Tip. Which, if you haven't watched it yet, please go watch it. It's funny because it was the very first thing we premiered as an actual, like, here's a pilot, here's something that could be a series, and that was over a year ago, and I still look back, and it was such an experiment. None of us knew how this was going to work out, and I still look at it and it's like, this looks really good. Again, when you even if you don't take into consideration that the only one on the crew who had any experience at all was me, even if you forget about that, it's a really nice looking cartoon. And then and it got into the New York Animation Film Festival thing too, and was actually a finalist. So it enjoyed some success. And then following that was my little autobiographical cartoon about called My Underdog Story. It's also a really, really good cartoon, where I now like to go around saying that I invented cosplay. So please check that one out. That one's really cool too. And then very recently, we premiered The Petty Avenger, which people are just responding to really marvelously. Thank you, by the way, if you were one of the people who checked it out. Please go check it out. Turn your friends onto it. But it just, again, it was one of those things where we were really, really just trying to figure out how to get things going, and it turned out great. So those are kind of our pilots, and then we have these things that we also put on the channel that are even shorter. Some of them are really only like 30 seconds long. They're called Fountoons. They're um, they're just short, quick gags, and again, I look at all of them, and I love them all. And that's the thing. You're gonna hear me over the course of this stream. You're gonna hear me talking a lot about Nightmare Hunters with a tremendous degree, possibly overly extended degree of affection. And it is because I really do love this concept, and I love this idea, and it's an idea that I've been carrying around for over 25 years. So naturally, I'm very, very excited that we're actually making it. That being said, um, like a parent with their children, please don't mistake my enthusiasm for Nightmare Hunters as being, playing favorites to all the other cartoons that we have on the channel. Please check them all out, because again, we've got ones. Bummer the Clown is still just makes me laugh, and I think is great. And the thing is, when I talk about these cartoons being great, I was always, the reason we're doing them is because I was happy with the ideas, but it's what the crews and what the individuals who are I'm collaborating with to make these cartoons is what they have brought into them that that have made them truly special. So when you hear me talk about how great they are, please keep in mind that my goal when Fountain's Pen Productions started up was to be as hands off as possible. So when I'm giving the cartoons praise, I'm giving praise to my crews and the people who are helping make them, because again, apart from my role as a mentor, apart from being the guy with experience who can kind of jump in when necessary and go, okay, here's what we should be doing here. Here's how we fix this problem. Here's, what, we should cut bait on this thing. It's not really working. So let's da 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 da. Da. Apart from that, we assign these things to a director, and then I try really hard to stay out of it, which is kind of why The Petty Avenger, and again, once you get done watching this, please go watch Petty Avenger. Watch all of it, please. I'm just begging you. Um, um, Petty Avenger stands out is it was a single panel comic strip that I did, a single gag, and the crews took it and they expanded it into this whole thing. And we definitely want to do like more episodes and stuff like that. So yeah. Um Corrupt Omega says they're all a breath of old air. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that was a compliment. Takes me back to classic goofy cartoon fun. Yes, That is exactly it. See, that's exactly the thing is, when I set all this thing up, I was very straightforward with everybody. I'm like, look, I cannot guarantee you that this is going to lead you to a job. I cannot guarantee you that we're ever going to get monetized. I can't guarantee you that this is ever going to make you famous. I cannot guarantee anything. No, don't worry, Back Bay. You're here on time. I've barely started yet. Um, but the big rule, I can't guarantee anybody anything with regard to what Fountains Pen Productions will do for you. Um, Other than I want it to be fun. Because what kept striking me, when the entire time that I was in Los Angeles and the entire time that I was pitching and selling shows and the entire time I was working on shows, um, the networks were constantly battling out, trying to figure out what is the magic ingredient to making a successful cartoon. And lots of people understood what it took to make a good cartoon. Lots of people understood what it took to make a cartoon that was efficient and checked all the boxes and did all the things that cartoons are supposed to do. But there was always like a magic ingredient that they couldn't quite put their finger on. And no amount of focus group testing, no amount of research data can uh, sort of let them in on the secret. And the secret is, if people who are making the cartoon are having fun doing it, it shows in the work. Um, for instance, My Life as a Teenage Robot was an absolute blast to work on. And I would put it to you that if you watch specifically my episodes of that show, I think you can tell that I'm having tons of fun. Like absolute loads of fun on My Life as a Teenage Robot. I had lots of fun on The Fairly Odd Parents. I had an absolute blast on Invader Zim. Those shows, I think you can look at and tell that the crews are having a good time doing it. That's the magic ingredient that none of them ever want to acknowledge. And I would say this to them, and they would look at me as though I had said, um, "Men from Mars had landed." I would say this to them. I'm like, look, part of the problem in animation right now is that people are so overworked and they're stretched so thin that they can't have any fun making the cartoons that they're making. And so you see it in the work. You can tell that they're miserable. And they would all just brush that off like it was no, oh, yeah, whatever, fountains going off again. And my whole thing was I had a production model that had slowly begun forming in my head that was a lot more efficient than the way the studios had been doing it. And I'm like, look, if we do it this way, people can go home at night. People can be with their families on the weekends, and then they can come in and have a good time making your cartoon, and that'll make the cartoon better. I would stand on the fountain tops and shout this at the top of my lungs, and nobody wanted to listen to that. Nobody wanted to hear that that was the magic ingredient that they were all constantly looking for. And so that's what I wanted to really try with Fountains Pen cartoons. The biggest rule, the most important rule, is that if you are not having fun doing it, we will shake your hand, wish you good luck, and absolutely no harm, no foul. So everybody here at Fountains Pen Cartoons is having fun. And by the way, that I have said to everybody time and time again, if you're not having fun, come to me and talk to me about how we can make it fun. And if we can't make it fun, again, no harm, no foul. Maybe this wasn't for you. Um, but as it stands, every time we have a meeting or everything, I just and I will go. We do this all through the Discord server, and I will go on the Discord server and just stalk everybody, and I'll see them yakking it up, and they have movie viewing nights and discussions and heated debates and all this stuff. And by all accounts, everybody's having a blast, and I think that's what's going to really set us apart. I think that's the magic ingredient. Um, all right. Um, I I made a snarky remark about Jimmy Neutron the other day that everyone's taking way too seriously. I didn't particularly care for Jimmy Neutron, but I do understand that it was a really well made show. Guys, there's so much out there that I love that everybody else hates and that I hate and everybody else loves. You cannot use me as a litmus test for what is good and what is not. So I need some coffee. Hang on. Okay. um, Somebody just asked, you worked on My Life as a Teenage Robot. Absolutely, I worked on My Life as a Teenage Robot. When people ask me what were your favorite things that you ever worked on in your career, when it comes to shows that I did not create, because I did a pilot for Nickelodeon that aired as one of the Oya cartoons called The Tantrum. Of all the things I've done for a major network that has aired, that was my favorite thing to work on. At a very close second place is My Life as a Teenage Robot. Rob Ronzetti was the greatest guy to work for. Alex Kerwin is an absolute genius to work alongside. That entire crew, I have never seen a crew become so close and so in sync with one another. There was, unlike other shows that I have worked on, shows that were still fun to work on, but unlike other shows I worked on, there were no ego clashes, none that I could tell of. Anyway, we were all just out to have fun and make a great cartoon. So, yeah, in fact, um, if you watch My Life as a Teenage Robot, some of my very favorite episodes are, I think my absolute favorite episode will always be Indestructible. So give that one a watch. Another favorite is Robot Riot. I do a voice in that one of Lil Dipper, but it's also it's a great episode. I loved the ones with Tuck. Tuck was just such a little. He was so himself, and the trouble he constantly caused Jenny was always just tons of fun for me. So, but yeah, on My Life as a Teenage Robot, I was a writer, director, and storyboard artist for that show. So check out those episodes. I did one half of the Christmas special, A Robot for All Seasons. I'm trying to. Oh, Brad Venture, Action Brad. Those are all episodes that I did. Yeah, Corrupt Omega said, "Who know that letting artists be passionate would be the sauce, right? I mean, shouldn't it be easy? Shouldn't like that's the thing? Like, I get accused sometimes of being arrogant and for thinking that, oh, you just think every idea you have is so great. I'm like, no, my whole thing is if I can figure this out and I consider myself to be an imbecile, why can't other people figure this out? Because to me, it seems so simple. You know, we're making cartoons. This should be the most fun job there is. And yet somehow, and I'm not someone who goes off like this very often, but somehow corporate America has figured out a way to make making cartoons miserable. And even the cartoons that I can tell you for a fact. Look, I can tell you for a fact that because I was a character designer on Invader Zim, I was not a storyboard artist. That was the one show that I didn't do any boards for. And I can tell you for a fact, everyone who did storyboards for that show, they bled on those storyboards. Like those storyboards were a lot of work. But so were they having fun? No, but they were passionate about it. They were enjoying what they got to do, and that also shows in the work. So, but yeah, again, of all the shows I worked on, My Life as a Teenage Robot was an absolute blast. I had a lot of fun on The Fairly Odd Parents. I had tons of fun on Invader Zim. I had a blast on my half of the Rick and Morty pilot. I take a great amount of pride in the fact that that final shot of a thousand years Rick and Morty.com, Rick and Morty. That's my shot, and that's one of the great things about storyboarding is creating ambiance. Because I remember having the idea to have the flickering iridescent bulb in the background. I'm just like, oh, that's going to be so funny. That's going to create so much menace. And I also created the U-toe truck gag where that's got a big toe on it going, I toe. That's my joke. So yeah, and it's kind of funny you bring up My Life as a Teenage Robot because it was My Life as a Teenage Robot was one of those shows where I had become known as the action guy for comedy shows, which was great for me because I've always loved the combination of action and comedy. That has always been a goal of mine, is to do a comedy action show. And I got my first real taste. Well, my first real taste of it was my pilot called The Tantrum, which you can still see if you look it up. It's on Vimeo under Frederator or something like that, because it was part of the Oh Yeah Cartoons group. But to me, that was an action comedy show. And the next thing that I directed was an episode of The Fairly Odd Parents called Action Packed, which wound up being a huge hit. And it was on the strength of Action Packed, actually, that they said, "Hey, this was great. Let's do a movie called Aberrant Catastrophe." And that's where I became the storyboard supervisor, the supervising director. My title kept changing. Um, and I got to do more action sequences, and I became well known as the action guy for your comedy show. So I always loved combining those two things, but this was always for other people's stuff, and I had to do things their way, and yada yada. So I'd always dreamed of doing my own, and um I had been, so like, yeah. Let's get into Nightmare Hunters. I'll take one more quick question. But did you ever think, Back Bay iPod Shuffle is asking, do you ever think at the time of working on your Wild Thornberries, one day Klasky Chupo will stop making hit content? Yes, I did. Actually, I actually did. I wish they hadn't, but I see, and that's where it all sort of began. I looked at the way Klasky Chupo operated, and I'm not going to go into the details of their various production models and stuff, but Klasky Chupo, and look, this is just my experience. It's my live stream. It's my channel. I'm allowed to say whatever I want. My experience was the way Klasky Chupo kept people from leaving is by making them feel as though they couldn't possibly get a job anywhere else. And I kind of proved them wrong, which I think they resented me for, because they would just make you feel like, oh, no, 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 you have to stay here, so you couldn't possibly get a job anywhere else. And when you go back to the fact that everyone should be having fun, um it was, I'm very appreciative of Klasky Chupo. I will always point them out as being, they gave me a start when I had absolutely zero experience. But that also was kind of how they operated. They took in people with no experience, and again, they sort of made them their own. And again, that's a great model for keeping people around, but it's not a great model if you want your people to be enjoying what they're doing. Now, that's not to say I didn't find ways to enjoy what I was doing on the Wild Thornberries, but that's kind of my little gift, is I've been able to find a way to enjoy everything I've worked on at some point or another. Um, anyway, but Klasky Chupo has done some amazing groundbreaking stuff, including Duck. I'd have done anything to be on Duckman. Um, and I was really happy that show was wrapping literally the day before I was meant to start work there, and I got to meet Everett Peck just before my first day on the Wild Thornberries. But anyway, so to begin the story of Nightmare Hunters, Nightmare Hunters, I feel like is it's a show whose title sells itself. I mean, you know what you're getting into just when you hear the name Nightmare Hunters, and it has its origins sort of long before I even moved to Los Angeles. So this was before I knew of the existence of Fairly Odd Parents. It's before, uh, you know, eh, it was before Invader Zim. It was before all of these things. Um, and that's another thing. People, because I come from Invader Zim, and by the way, this is a fair conclusion to draw. Because I used to work on Invader Zim, people will look at my stuff and go, "Oh, I see you were very influenced by working on Invader Zim." Yes and no. Yes, of course, I was absolutely influenced by working on the show, and I have zero problem proclaiming the fact that I was a fan of Jonan's comics before I ever met the guy. I had, back when I was still living in Michigan, I had been reading Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, and I had been reading the other stuff that he had done, and I was a fan. But I would look at his stuff and say, "Ooh, he has a lot of the same influences that I have." Chris Grimley, Tim Burton. I could, this. We both had a scratchy line quality. There were similarities, and by the way, that's how I got the job. Is I took a character design test, and because at that time my stuff looked the most like his of anybody that they were able to find, and therefore I got the job. Now, very soon thereafter, they gave me Aaron Alexovich as an assistant, and it came out that he was clearly much better suited for the job than I was. And shortly thereafter, Fairly Odd Parents said, Butch Hartman said, "You're going to be a director on my show." And so I was like, okay. And so I left, and Aaron got to take his rightful place as the lead character designer on that show. But my point is, um, I had that kind of spooky, scratchy, dark, black line style in me before I even moved to Los Angeles. And even before all that, I had been thinking a lot about dreams and nightmares. I've just always been fascinated by them as a phenomenon because it's one of those things. Oh yes, Black Bay is also said. I assume you like Robert. Robert Crumb was a huge influence on me. Strange, disturbed fella, but yes, undeniably one of my big influences. I consider him sort of the Picasso of that generation. Um, and you can see that in my work. You can see influences from all over the place in my work, which is again why when I came out started pitching the idea around Nightmare Hunters, it was unfortunately very close to the time that Butch Hartman was developing Danny Phantom, and everyone sort of thought, oh, um, this is in response to Danny Phantom. It's like, no, I've had this idea for years and years and years and years, but more on that later. Before I had even moved to Los Angeles, before Klasky Csupo, before the Wild Thornberrys, before all of that, I had become independently fascinated by dreams and nightmares. And just to give you the receipts, well, one of the uh, graphic novel series and comic series that I was absolutely bonkers over was, of course, Sandman by Neil Gaiman. Now, Neil Gaiman, of course, we've all learned things about him that we wish weren't true, but that does not take away from the fact that the Sandman series of stories is an absolutely brilliant set of books. This is back when Sam Keith did the artwork for this stuff, and I remember reading this, and I remember reading an introduction that he did where he said he did just exhaustive amounts of research and lore to put together these series of books, and I admired that instantly. I'm like, yeah, research. I should start to, and I thought to myself, well, I want to do a story about nightmares, but I didn't think it was going to go in this direction because another one of my huge influences is J.R.R. Tolkien, and I had known that I wanted to create. And I apologize. I know that this is going to sound incredibly pretentious. I wanted to create a legendarium. I wanted to world build, and I wasn't sure what that was going to be yet. I at first thought I was going to, because what Tolkien did, the reason the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and all that exists is because Tolkien wanted to create a mythology for England. And I thought, well, that's really cool. I want to create my own mythology. It's not necessarily for the United States, but it's just I want to create my own mythology. So one of the stories that I came up with was called The Lunatic, and it was about this person that the whole world thought was insane because he kept telling them that he was having a love affair with the moon. And of course, it turns out he absolutely was having a love affair with the moon. And anyway, it's a whole other story. But that's where the sort of sprinkles of atoms and DNA for Nightmare Hunters began. I wanted to create a legendarium. I wanted to world build, and I wanted it to have far-reaching implications. And one of the things I hope you'll take away from this, if you're watching now live or if you watch this later, if you go back and you look at every single cartoon I've ever storyboarded or directed, I am someone who, if I can't add more layers to the story than just what's on the written page, I get bored very quickly. So I have always used my position, no matter what it was, whether it was character designer, storyboard artist, director, writer, what I always try to add more layers to things because look, this is getting very deep, but for me, the reason to create art is like writing a letter, putting it in a bottle, and throwing it out into the ocean, and just hoping beyond hope that somebody gets it, somebody reads your message, and somebody is moved by it. That's why art exists for me, and that's what it always has been for me. Whether I've been doing comics, animation, cartoons, whatever it's been, that is what art is to me. And the if you get right down to it, I have always been someone who created art to send the message out into the world for anyone else out there like me who grew up through no fault of anyone's at all. I had a wonderful childhood and all that stuff, but felt alienated and felt disenfranchised and felt like he didn't quite exist on the same plane as other people, and found life to be very, very scary and confusing and befuddling and all of those things. You know, I'm getting a little choked up. The reason for me creating art has always been a message in a bottle that reads simply "Me too." That's all it's ever been. So that is where this story really begins. And so, as I said, I had this idea where I wanted to create a mythology, and I wanted it to be multi-layered, but I also wanted it to be accessible. I wanted it to be, sort of commercially, and I wanted to reach a large audience. So this is an idea that I'd been percolating, and it sort of started out with the Lunatic, but then like I said, I read the Sandman, and I'm like, wow, these are great, but he's kind of got the whole dream thing cornered. But reading those again, I just got incredibly, incredibly fascinated with dreams and nightmares in general. And so between the years of about, I'd say, 1991 and 2000, I studied dreams and I studied the subconscious just endlessly. And I didn't bring them all over here because I didn't. I'm already. I don't know how long this is, but it's already going on very long. And I haven't even really gotten into Nightmare Hunters yet. But the point is, I have stacks and stacks of books about nightmares, and this is one of the ones I'm most proud of. Is the pop-up book of nightmares, and it's just a gorgeous piece of art in and of itself. And what's fascinating to me about nightmares and about dreams is where's one of the really good ones? Is that we still don't really know what they are. We don't know, we truly don't know what nightmares even are. We don't know what dreams are. They're so mysterious and they're so ethereal that I just kept going back to that. And again, I kept saying to myself, Neil Gaiman, he already did it. He nailed it with Sandman. There's no room for this. So I just kept thinking, what else can I do? What else can I do? What else can I do? And so I continued, and I continued percolating different ideas. Another one of my big influences wound up being this book, and this guy's artwork, Barlow's Inferno. This guy creates his own sort of mythology from hell, of what hell looks like and what it would be like to go to hell and then come back and just have this really super cool, creepy artwork in it. And he too drew from a lot of different sources, just a lot of different mythologies and stories and stuff about what it would look like, and including Dante's Inferno and that sort of thing. But I was just fascinated by that. And again, I became more and more fascinated with this idea of creating lore, this idea of world building where I made up the rules. And so anyway, as I'm percolating these ideas and as I'm kind of, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be working in animation by this time. Right around 1997, I'd been working, figuring I need to work a day job, so I'm always just going to be working on my comics at night and on weekends, and I will put whatever it is I come up with out as a comic. And prior to that, I had been doing a comic strip for my local paper called Fountain's Pen, and I had done an independent comic book called Bulk Comics, where it was much like Fountain's Pen cartoons. It was a mishmash of comedy, drama, action, all kinds of different things all in one book. And so I've always wanted to, um, you know, have a means to do lots of different stories. And that's why Fountain's Pen Cartoons exists the way it does, as opposed to saying, here's our one big story, you either love it or you hate it. I want to do lots of different stories. Um, so anyway, I'm working in animation at little rinky-dink, sort of local production houses back in Michigan. Eventually, all the jobs just dry up there, and there's no work to be had there. But by this time, I'd sort of grown really fond of drawing for a living, and it was right around that time that I kept hearing about there's an animation boom in Los Angeles. Everyone is getting hired in Los Angeles, and so I packed up, moved to Los Angeles, and if you look at my other video called Cartoon Chaos, how I got my start in the animation industry, I go into the story in great detail. But the point is, I got my start at Klasky Csupo and began working in the animation industry. So as I'm working in the animation industry, I'm starting to think more about animation and less about doing comics. And I started I started getting really into I mean, I'd always been into anime, but I started really getting heavily into anime again. And one of the things that stuck out to me right out of the gate was Vampire Hunter D by, and I'm sorry if I'm gonna mangle his name, Yoshiaki Kawajiri. Um, I've never had to say his name out loud, so I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. But he's done a bunch of different stuff. One I think called Dark City, and he's done a bunch, and everything he directs just looks gorgeous. And I've been aware of the Vampire Hunter D franchise before that, but man, that his version of the movie just absolutely grabbed me. And I remember thinking this whole idea, and I had thought about Blade the Vampire Hunter, and this whole trope of the person who is either a vampire or half vampire who is now hunting vampires. I'm like, that always struck me as a really interesting dynamic and something worth exploring. But I kept thinking to myself, it's like, yeah, how? Because I knew I was going to want to do something that was, at least semi kid friendly. And I'm like, how do you do that? And keep it kid friendly, because vampires feed on human beings. So, but another example was the Devil May Cry game franchise when that came out. Just the variety of monsters in it and the variety of different creatures, and how cool it was that it was never just one person. It was never just stormtroopers, or it was never just there were just lots of different bizarre, messed up looking villains to conquer, and that was a big influence on me. And then, of course, not long after moving to Los Angeles, a little movie came out called The Matrix. And I remember thinking, well, that's a really cool concept as well. This whole idea that there are two separate worlds. One is the real world, and one is a digital world, but they both feel exactly the same. And I remember thinking to myself, well, there's definitely a dream metaphor going on there, and that's really effective. And as as someone, I started out wanting to be a comic strip artist, and so I grew up studying a lot of comic strips from like the turn of the early past century, like Crazy Cat and Ignatz and Little Nemo and Slumberland. And again, yeah, and again, someone had done. I don't have the DVD box here, but someone had done a Little Nemo in Slumberland movie that I thought was really gorgeous looking, animated. That wound up being a big influence. And so the more I I just kept thinking it's like, dreams are vampires, dreams are vampires, dreams are vampires. And again, one of the other huge, and again, obviously, I couldn't do digital realm because the Matrix had already done it. Um, yeah, Crazy Cat is awesome. If you like cartoons, if you like the art of cartooning at all, I'm begging you to get out there and read some Crazy Cat and Ignatz because it's just absolute genius. You want to talk about the people who influenced Robert Crumb. Crazy Cat and Ignatz is one of them. But one of my other so again, I'm trying to think what am I going to do? What's my version of all this? Like again, I had originally thought I want this all to be sort of cosmological. Like I was going to have this lunatic who was having a love affair with the moon, but then I'm like, that's that's and I was going to have all the other planets involved and all the other I was going to completely forego all of the all of the Greek mythological explanations for what all the different planets did and all that stuff. And so I was going to create my own, versions for what they all did. But the more I kept going with that, the more I was just like, this is very adult and it's very deep, and I wanted to reach a wider audience because, like I said, I ultimately, my default setting as a kid was scared. And I have no explanation for that. I was not, my parents were awesome. School was not a ton of fun, but I think lots of people have that experience. But um, but I was just always scared. I was afraid all the time of everything. That was just my default setting, and so I kept coming back to this theme of fear. Like, what are we afraid of? What are our nightmares? What do we dream about that is unpleasant? But then I knew I wanted it to be funny on some level because I like to make people laugh. I love the combination of raising the stakes really, really high and making things get very, very grim, and then throwing in a laugh. And one of the other big influences on me as an artist was Ghostbusters. To me, the original Ghostbusters is still one of the most perfectly formed artistic achievements um, of human history. It is such a perfect combination of humor, action, science fiction, fantasy, all these things rolled into one. I just think it is absolutely brilliant. And so that was a big influence on me. And so I started thinking more and more about, okay, maybe I can do something with dreams and nightmares. Maybe there's something to do here. And this was all about the time when I was working on both Oh Yeah cartoons, Invader Zim, and freelancing for the Fairly Odd Parents simultaneously. And around that time, I was also dating a girl who suffered from severe night terrors. And I didn't even know that was a thing. I literally had no idea it was a thing. With all of my research that I had done on dreams and nightmares, I didn't know what night terrors were. And so, because I was dating her, and because this was suddenly, something that was a part of life, I did a ton of research on it, and it's fascinating and horrifying simultaneously. Um, and so again, I kept going back to this whole like, gosh, what even are nightmares? What are they? Because when you're having them, you are convinced that it's real, and for that time that you're just up in your head, they might as well be real. So the fear is 100% real. um so then again, I just kept percolating this idea, and it was, like I said, it was right around the time I had been working on Zim, Fairly Odd Parents, and Oh Yeah cartoons. I had sold the Tantrum to Oh Yeah cartoons, um and not only sold it as a short for Oh Yeah cartoons, but Nickelodeon had really gotten behind it and said, we love this, we want to make it into a series. And so they bought it lock, stock, and barrel. And so while working on Invader Zim, while working on the Fairly Odd Parents, while doing my short for Oh Yeah cartoons, I was also developing the Tantrum as a series. And so I got an agent, and I didn't know anything about getting agents, so I just got the agent that was Butch's agent at the time. And Nickelodeon had said, we want to make this into a series, so we want to buy it lock, stock, and barrel. Here's your check. Now go off and do 3 seasons worth of premises, 1 season's worth of scripts. Write out what the video game would be like, write out what the movie would be like, write out what these characters would be 10 years ago. Now, so I learned a lot about development. And while I was doing all that, I was like, oh man, I got to apply this to my other show, to my other idea that I want to do. But the whole time I'm kind of focused on that, so that sort of got put on the back burner. Um, and again, I'm really focused because Nickelodeon was very hot on picking up the Tantrum as a series, and it came this close. Um, and consequently it was one of the reasons why I had to stop working on so many shows simultaneously, and so I had to sort of trim some of that back, and that was one of the things that led into me not being on Invader Zim anymore and blah blah blah. So I'm focusing really heavily on this, but now I'm also thinking in terms of like, okay, well, what about this next thing I'm going to do? So I get done developing the Tantrum. They focus test it, and with the younger kids, it focus tested great, and with the kids ages, I think it was 10 to 14, it did a B plus, and that's not good enough for them, so it didn't get picked up. Now by this time, I had already told my agent that I had other shows that I wanted to pitch, to which she replied, "Good, because you never make any money off your first show." And that's the thing. When Nickelodeon finally passed on the Tantrum, I was like, "Well, can I take this and pitch this elsewhere now?" And she's like, "No, they own it." And but what was good about that was, by virtue of having sold the Tantrum. Um, oh, hey, Raiko Star, welcome. By having sold the Tantrum, Watashi no name wa John LaFontaine desu. Um, Having sold the Tantrum, that gave me a little bit of bargaining posture, so that when I would sell my next thing, I could go to whatever network and say, okay, I'm a proven commodity. Um, you know, if you option this, you can option it, but the option has a limit, and when it runs out, I get the rights back. So anyway, Tantrum gets passed on, and almost immediately I'm like, okay, I'm going to take all these ideas and I'm going to combine them into the next thing I pitch. And I had started coming up with some rough concepts and some rough sketches and stuff, some of which I will show you in just a minute. But I can still practically remember the exact moment that the title came to me. I was living in Burbank, and I lived so close to the Nickelodeon studio as well as the local mall, where I would go to. It wasn't a Tower Records, but it was some other big record store chain. But they would also sell. They had really cool anime and stuff for sale, and I went there, and it was at night, and I was walking home. I just purchased a whole just pile of anime that I couldn't wait to get home and watch. And I was thinking of this show that I had in my head. And I was also thinking about Vampire Hunter D, and just the title Vampire Hunter. I'm like, God, again, that title, it just sells itself. And then it just hit me, Nightmare Hunter. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Because if you've got somebody hunting nightmares, unlike vampires, they don't suck blood. There's no sort of theological problematic situation where it's like, you don't have to get into any of that, because everybody has dreams and nightmares. It doesn't matter, what religion or part of the globe you live on. Everybody has dreams and nightmares, and that really was the Big Bang. And here's why I like to liken it to the Big Bang, because you're going to hear me talk as I continue. You're going to hear me talk about Nightmare Hunter's greatness, and I want you to understand something. This is very important, because this, I think, applies to many great works of fiction. once the idea had come, once the big bang had happened, the show created itself. Um, yes, I was there, and yes, I was the conduit for it. But once I had the title, everything that came thereafter came in a very, very organic, natural way. Not because this was my idea, but because this was a thing that was slowly coming to life. And it was coming to life from where I stood, almost free of my influence. It was its own thing. And I think Tolkien has spoken of it in that regard too, and I've heard other authors and other creators talk about it in those terms as well. That when you are world building and you've got the sort of basis for everything, characters don't do what you want them to do. They do what they must do because that's what their character requires. The world doesn't operate based on your rules; it operates based on its rules. And from the second I came up with that title, that's when it all started coming together. And that's when I started feverishly keeping. This is my official Nightmare Hunters sketchbook. The cover came later, but I started feverishly jotting down ideas in my sketchbook. And guys, I got to tell you, carry a sketchbook around. If you're someone who's trying to create, trying to world, carry a sketchbook around with you everywhere you go. Because I didn't have one on me at the time, and I really wish I did. So I ran home and immediately just started jotting that because it started coming to me like crazy. Um, and like I said, I was partially inspired by this girl I was dating at the time who suffered from night terrors, and so I was like, well, I want now the character is not based on her, but I was like, I want a female protagonist, and I want her to be different from practically every other female protagonist I had ever seen. Yes, she would be strong. Yes, she would be smart. Yes, she would be all those things, but she would also be vulnerable, and she would also be scared. She would be a multi-layered individual. And I think this might have been really the very first sketch of my two main characters, Rem and Lucy. Um, Lucy, of course, is this one. That is Rem. They are the Nightmare Hunters. And I shortly after I sort of came up with the idea, I came up with Nightmare Hunter, and I was like, well, actually, I don't want to just have one lone character because then that character doesn't have anyone to play off of. So I want to have at least one other main character. And so I got the idea of having a character who suffered from severe night terrors, and her origin story is just about her learning to cope with that and the things she does to learn to cope with that. Now you could take a look at that first sketch I did of her, and you go, oh, okay, there she is, goth girl. And I knew right out of the gate I was not going to have her just be your typical brooding, sullen, angry goth girl. By the way, angry goth girls are some of my favorite people on the planet, so don't take offense to that. I just didn't. It had already been done enough times and done better than I felt like I could do it. I just wanted her to be. I wanted her to be someone that took you a long time to figure out. Like I wanted her to be enigmatic, and I wanted her to be a bit of a mystery in and of herself. So again, like I said, I just barely had the idea. I ran home, started filling sketchbooks with just literally anything that I could come up with. Oh, originally her name was Rebecca. I don't know where that name came from, but shortly after I started jotting down ideas, I was like, wait, Rebecca? No, she's not a Rebecca. Of course, her name is Lucy because she has lucid dreams. And I've got notes here that say things like Dreamland is called the dreamscape. Their Earth is a giant brain called the collective unconscious. See, again, this is now again, I don't even know if this stuff is still sticking, but that's where world building begins. There are nightmare trees. Dreams emerge from the mind's eye. We'll get into more of that later. Da, 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 da. I just started doing all kinds of random little doodles of different types of nightmares. I'm still kind of fond of that tapeworm because tapeworms I find to be very, very disgusting. Da, da, da. As you can see, the character of Lucy began to evolve more and more as time went on. Da, da, da. Series idea, show fan gallery during credits. I would still like to do that. I would still like. I've always thought it was cool when shows would sort of show fan art uh, during the credits. Da, da, da. Here's more and again, that's the other thing. If you are creating something and you're writing stuff down, don't feel like like everything you write down has to be genius. What I'm really, really proud of with regard to these books, and by the way, I've got a pile of them over here. With regard to these books, is I wrote down everything. It didn't matter if I thought it was a good idea or not. Because sometimes the thing that you write down is not the idea, but it's the idea that leads to the idea. So get it all down. Here's another sort of evolution of Lucy as we continue. There's a note here: you can't destroy a nightmare. Nightmare is the shadow of a dream. Yeah. I think the sort of cosmology was that all nightmares used to be dreams that somehow got corrupted. That's me again borrowing from Tolkien a little bit there. Yeah, here's I played around a lot. I played around a lot with Lucy's hair. But again, even though in all these drawings she looks thoroughly distressed, she's not. In her school life, she's not. She's not brooding. She's not angry. She's not. She's not a snob. She likes everybody, and everybody likes her for completely different reasons. Yes, of course, she's seen as slightly odd and all that stuff. But again, despite the fact that she never gets a good night's sleep, she's pleasant to be around. She has a variety of just incredibly eclectic hobbies, and of course, she's the smartest kid at her school because she has insomnia, and because she can't sleep very much, she spends all of her time just reading about a lot of different things. She, of course, plays the violin. She her grandmother is Native American and taught her how to make dream catchers. I'm trying to think of if I have the drawing here somewhere, but one of the little hobbies that I gave her, just all notes. One of the little hobbies that I gave her was that she likes to make finger puppets and act out her various nightmares with the finger puppets. That's kind of her way of coping. Here's some little thumbnail storyboards I did. Trying to find. So yes. Oh, and I started making fonts and started making logos. The sort of eyeball logo. The whole idea behind that is it's supposed to represent half asleep, half awake, or the the sort of world in between those two things. So yeah. Oh, what was that one? Here's my outline for what a pilot could look like. So I had established that the main protagonist was going to be this girl who suffered from night terrors. So that was off to the races, and her personality started coming out really, really easily. And as a character, I was just instantly, this is a great kid. Oh my gosh, I love this character. Really enjoyed writing her. But then I wanted to give her a partner. And so, as going back to this drawing, I came up with the character of Rem. And of course, his name is your Rem, rapid eye movement. But I didn't just want him to be some character who was just there to be her friend just because, or be her um, companion just because I decided that that's how it should be. He needed to have a purpose. And the whole idea behind Rem is that in the nightmare realm, Rem was a nightmare himself. Um, this is the dream realm. This is the nightmare realm. And if you were to look at this world, on its axis, they would exist, kind of like this. One, the sort of dark mirror image of the other. And so the whole idea is that Rem as a character was at one point Lucy's worst nightmare. He was a thing that would torment her in her dreams. He was what is known as a shadow goblin. But during one of her dreams one night, Lucy discovers that she has a power that she had heretofore not been aware of. On one of the occasions where Rem is, doing what he does, chasing her around and kind of scaring her around the nightmare realm, Lucy, using all of her willpower, that's sort of Lucy using her power, changes Rem from a nightmare to a dream. So he's a bad dream gone good. And now the thing of it is, as we get deeper into the lore, we would explore the fact that the reason she was able to do this is because Rem himself, in whatever bit of self-awareness and will that he had, he didn't like being a nightmare goblin. He didn't like tormenting people, and so yes, she changed him, but he also wanted to change. And with those two things combined, and her incredibly powerful imagination, she changed him from being a nightmare goblin into someone who could help her in the dream realm. So she transformed him. She, broke him out of his position of servitude, and so now he has become her ally in the nightmare world. And so together, the two of them are the nightmare hunters. So why are they hunting nightmares? Why do they even need to hunt nightmares? That is an excellent question. But anyway, so anyway, this idea is now, like I said, this idea is just building itself. And every time I think, oh, I should really do it this way, the world in my head just sort of says, no, it's got to be this way. So, why? So Lucy changing Rem into a bad dream gone good is the catalyst for something huge in the collected subconscious. The Lord of the Nightmare realm, Nightmare, who we'll see in a minute, he perceives this happening. He perceives that Lucy uses her, what they refer to as figment. And yes, I know that's been used in a video game. I had this idea long ago. uses her imagination and her lucidity while dreaming to change him. The Lord of all nightmares sort of sees, oh my gosh, somebody took one of my servants and bent him to her own will. I don't like that at all, because if more people start to do that, then my power in the nightmare realm is diminished. And if more people learn how to do this, more people are going to learn to conquer their fears, and my ability to subjugate the human race in the nightmare realm is going to eventually amount to nothing. So suffice it to say, for the first time ever in his infinite existence, the Lord of all nightmares, Nightmare, is scared. he himself is petrified, and he's petrified specifically of Lucy and the fact that she demonstrated, holy cow, humans are capable of conquering their fears. Moreover, they're not just capable of conquering them, they're capable of using their fears to their own advantage. Like I said, I like to work in multiple layers. So, with this as a catalyst, Nightmare, and I'm going to try and find a good picture of him in here. Oh, yeah. Who, as you'll notice in a minute, is portrayed as a sort of um, demonic horse-like thing. And that's the thing; he is a thing. Oh yeah, here. This I still sort of like this drawing a lot. That is the collected unconscious. That is sort of the planet, if you will, of both the dream and nightmare realm. It's where all thoughts, ideas, dreams, hopes, all that stuff live. Here we go. Here is nightmare. One of the initial and most sort of profound bits of inspiration I had for him was Hades from Disney's Hercules. Hercules. I wanted him to be multi-tentacled, but I also wanted him to be very, very legitimately scary, ruthless. When I would think of his voice in my head, I would think of Megatron from the original Transformers and all that stuff. So again, just no backstory where he was at one point, a sympathetic character, just plain evil and someone who exists for nothing more than to subjugate humanity via their fears. Um, that's his whole bag. That's his whole thing. And so, because he sees Lucy take one of his beings and alter it into something that is useful to her, he's petrified. And he says to himself, well, we cannot have this. We absolutely cannot have this. And so, in an attempt to preemptively stop humanity from ever, um, you know, doing what Lucy did and sort of learning that you are capable of conquering and putting your fears to use and et cetera, et cetera. Um, uh, Rather than ever let humanity get to that point, he's decided, well, it's time to wage war on the waking world. So again, he doesn't start a war with the dream realm. His idea is it's time to attack humans where they live, and this is where the whole sort of vampire inspiration comes in. Um, he uh, he falls upon an ancient sort of, I don't want to say text, but just bit of knowledge. Haven't worked that out yet. Where he learns that it is possible for dreams and nightmares to go into the real world, but when they do that, when they go into the real world, they find out that their powers are greatly diminished because, of course, this is not where they belong. The act of sort of pushing their way out of the subconscious into the real world drains them heavily. So the second they get into the real world, they need to feed on somebody's figment or their imagination in order to sort of re-energize themselves and do what it is they need to do. And this is an example of nightmare sort of feeding off of the energy and imagination of, and of course, the people in the world with the most lucid imaginations are our children. So, um, so that's what he's out to do. He starts a plan for breaking into, starting a war with reality. So the conscious, as I think I put in the pitch material, the conscious and subconscious are about to collide in a war between those two worlds. And so, um, so therein is the plot. Nightmares have figured out a way to break into the real world and So this war is being waged on two different fronts. One in the nightmare realm, and two in the real world. Now, um, trying to find a good picture to go along with it, but um, the idea being that Rem and Lucy now have a conundrum. Lucy, of course, feels guilty because it's sort of what she did that was the linchpin to set all this off. And so she feels responsible and she's like, well, I got to put a stop to this. And Rem, having once been a servant of Nightmare, is like, well, you're not going to be able to do this alone. So I'm going to help you. And so they um, they visit sort of the Lord of the Dream realm, and they sort of say to him, "Look, this is what's happening. Um, we got to put a stop to this." Blah blah blah. And the Lord of the Dream realm. I forgot what I've named him, and I have a picture of him somewhere. If I stumble across it, I'll show you. But he's like, well, dreams are powerless to fight against nightmares, but I have this one thing that I can give you, Rem, that you may wield because you have now existed both as a dream, as a nightmare, and it's called the Eye of Morpheus, and it's this staff that basically is, sorry, it's Rem's lightsaber. Um, it's sort of the one instrument that can chop up nightmares both either in the real world or in the dream world. Now the thing is, nightmares can be transformed but they can't be completely destroyed. So all Rem can do is weaken them with the Morpheus staff. um, but then what Lucy discovers, because her grandma taught her how to make dream catchers, is that using dream catchers, she can catch the nightmares in the beads on a dream catcher and store them there indefinitely, sort of like the ghost traps in Ghostbusters. So between the two of them, they can stem the tide of this threat. Um, now, when Rem and Lucy are in the dream world, Lucy, of course, continues to develop her powers, and this sort of where it becomes kind of like the Matrix, in that Lucy uses the dream realm as sort of her place for training and sort of figuring out, okay, how can I continue to, use my imagination and use my power of thought to fight nightmares and stuff like that. And Rem sort of gives her the inside scoop on this is how they operate. This is blah 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 blah. And so the two of them use the nightmare realm and the dream world to kind of train together. But in the meantime, um, Nightmare is sending his agents into the real world. And so as a result, Rem has to, from time to time, go into the real world as well to help Lucy sort of turn them away, and send them back from whence they came. Now, again, the whole time I'm doing this, um, I'm kind of thinking to myself, well, I'm just, I'm putting together a pitch, and but at this point, I'm really just sort of keeping lots and lots of notes and doing sketches and all that kind of thing. I um, don't really have a clear vision of this as a series yet. But here's what I mean. Like, these are these are bed bugs, and tormenting a kid in his dreams. But when they find a kid and they torment him in his dreams, they're able to take them and go to their sort of third eye portal. And there's them chasing the kid around, getting him cornered. These are all out of order, and this is what I mean. Like, I was just sketching down ideas when they came. I didn't try and put them into any coherent order. I wasn't sure exactly what sort of format this was going to take, and yada yada yada. And again, keeping in mind the whole time, I've got a full time job in animation. I'm doing the Fairly Odd Parents, and I'm just working in animation. So this is stuff I'm doing when I'm at home. So here we go. So yeah, nightmares discover that they can kind of push their way into the real world, and this is what happens when one of the bed bugs pushes his way into the real world. Now, of course, the first thing that a nightmare has to do when it comes into the real world is it has to siphon people of their imagination. But this particular one siphons a bunch of kids of their imagination, and he becomes kaiju sized. So, oh yeah, here's an example. Yeah, the kid was sleeping, and then he wakes up from the nightmare of the bed bugs taunting him, and then um, they push their way out through that portal in his forehead into the real world. And so the first time that happens, Lucy is kind of at a loss as to what exactly to do about it because she's brand new to all this. And so Rem tells her, "Well, you've got to summon me to the real world so that I can help you out." So that's exactly what she does. And this is Lucy basically summoning Rem to come into the real world. Now, um, when Rem is in the nightmare realm, he's limited to what he can do. His powers are based on what they were when he was a nightmare. So he has a handful of powers that he can evoke. Um, but when Lucy's in the dream world, she discovers more and more that she, kind of like Neo in the Matrix, can increasingly do practically whatever she wants if she has enough willpower to do it. But then when Rem comes into the real world, Lucy is of course limited by real world physics and all that stuff. But Rem can fly around, and he can use the staff to sort of locate where nightmares are and yada yada yada. So again, together they are the perfect nightmare fighting team. And um, like I say, they discover that they can trap these nightmares, and their essence is contained in these beads. And of course, Lucy just has a closet full of dream catchers, which is kind of her version of the ghost storage unit from Ghostbusters. So again, that's the plot of the show. Nightmares have figured out a way to break into the dream world, and only Rem and Lucy can stop them, and hijinks ensue. And by hijinks, I mean Rem as a character, unlike Lucy. Um, he sort of understands this all a lot better than she does because he knows what's going on. And I've kind of likened Rem to being sort of like Daffy Duck when Daffy is loony, especially when he's in the real world. Like he finds gravity to be hilarious. He just, he just thinks the real world is the silliest thing he's ever seen. Um, and so, but again, and this is where I did in fact sort of borrow a little bit from Invader Zim. I'm like, when he's in the real world, he has to sort of pose himself as a normal kid so he can navigate, and so he sort of disguises himself that way. Oh, here's a just a particularly, I feel like, kind of telling image of Lucy, just sort of giving you a peek into her personality. And so, yeah, so a lot of the different plot lines revolve around very specific fears. One plot line revolves around the fear of going to the dentist. Um, Here's one: the fear of going to the doctor. Um, and oh, geez, fear of going to the barber to get your hair cut. Man, look at the barber dude. Um, so again, more and more to me, this was my version of a vampire hunter show, um, and it was also my version of a kids horror show. Like this was meant to be a scary show. Now, underneath all that, it was also meant to be a show that the underlying message is that fears are conquerable. Fears are things that you can in fact take control of, and things that you can um, use your own will upon. Now there's no clear dogma to it, and there's no sort of do this and you'll be okay forever kind of thing. The show presents it as a thing that you can work on and a thing that you can do, that you may not, you may not be able to get rid of all your fears forever, or anything like that, but you can in fact, um, face your fears and not let them become who you are, not let them own you, not them let them enslave you. So that's the show. Now, as I'm percolating all this, I'm taking all this down. It's all starting to come together into pitchable material. While this is all going on, I have been the supervising director, storyboard supervisor, whatever you want to call it, on the Fairly Odd Parents for a while. And right around this time, Danny Phantom is gearing up. And I, at this point, I don't know anything about Danny Phantom. I just know that there's this show that Butch is developing called Danny Phantom. And so, but because I'm around, I get to see little peeks of it. And eventually, I of course get wind of what this show Danny Phantom is about, and I think to myself, "Oh wow, he's a ghost hunter, huh? Huh. Well, okay." To me, I heard this and I thought to myself, "Okay, well, at this point in our relationship, I was, Butch's right hand guy." So it was fairly well assumed that I would be allowed to, work on Danny Phantom if I wanted to. And so I just thought to myself, and he had made it known to me that he wanted me to direct on Danny Phantom. And so I had resolved myself and said, okay, Butch is doing this show. I have just compiled this show. You know what? I'm just going to take all the ideas that I have for Nightmare Hunters, and I'm gonna keep working for Butch because I like working for Butch. And I'm like, I'm just gonna channel all of the energy that I had for Nightmare Hunters into Danny Phantom. Because goodness knows I have all these ideas that you could easily translate into ghosts, that I could work around, for his benefit. So anyway, by the way, chat, could someone in the chat let me know that you guys are still there? So anyway, um, so I resigned myself. Okay, I'm just going to pour all this energy into day. And I had piles and piles of sketchbooks and notes and just all kinds of stuff all ready to go for Nightmare Hunters. But I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to put it into Danny Phantom. So that it was around that time that I went to Butch, and I said to Butch, look, um, I've now been the supervising director on Fairly Odd Parents for over a year. Oh, thank you for shouting out in the chat. Um, I'm like, I know Danny Phantom's going to get its pickup, and it's going to go to series like that. I go, so I'll make you a deal. Because here's the part I jumped over. Right around that time, I'd also gotten a call from Disney, and I don't care who you are when you're in the animation industry. If Disney calls, you pick up the phone. So I'd had a meeting with Disney, and based on my mojo from both the Tantrum and the Fairly Odd Parents, because the Fairly Odd Parents by this time was a huge hit, and I had gotten all kinds of good echoes for Abracatastrophe, and like the episodes that I directed always stood out. My name was out there, and so Disney came to me and said, "We've got this show called American Dragon Jake Long, and we would like you to be the series director for it." And so I'm like, "Huh." So we've got Danny Phantom over here. We've got American Dragon Jake Long over here. Both involve monster, ghost, creature hunting. And then I've got my own thing, Nightmare Hunters. And my thinking at the time was, again, I can just take all this stuff that I have compiled for Nightmare Hunters, and I can easily apply it to either Danny Phantom or American Dragon. And so I had resigned myself to the fact that I would just put all of that into either of these shows. So I went and I had the meeting with Disney Disney at the time, for that brief period, loved me, loved my energy, loved that I had ideas all ready to go, yada yada yada. So they had offered me the job to direct a pilot for American Dragon, and I would be the series director. I would be in control of it, or so they said. So I had that on the table, and then I knew Danny Phantom was coming up, and I knew I'd be able to work on that if I wanted to. So I go to Butch, and I said, Butch, here's the deal. Um, I know Danny Phantom's coming up, and you know as well as I do that I love doing action comedy. I think I have a ton of ideas for Danny Phantom. I think I would be great for the show, but I've also got Disney knocking on my door to be the series director for American Dragon. I go, here's the thing. I want to stay here. By this time, I'd been at Nickelodeon for I think over 5 years, which by animation standards, that is a long time. I liked Nickelodeon. I didn't want to leave, but Disney was making me a really good offer to direct their American Dragon pilot. And I go, Butch, I think I need to take a step up from being merely a supervising director, and I need to be a show director. So if you make me the show director for Danny Phantom or the Fairly Odd Parents, I will stick around. I'm like, but if not, I'm gonna go be the show director for American Dragon. And this was one of the pivotal moments of my career because this was me going, I'm working on the number two cartoon on planet Earth, and I'm really rolling the dice. But my feeling has always been if you're gonna gamble, gamble on yourself. Because I knew looking over the material for American Dragon, I could make this show a bombastic hit because I had all this Nightmare Hunter stuff sitting around. So I went to Butch and I said that, and to his credit, I thoroughly believe, and he may say something different if you ask him about it now. If you ask him about it now, he'd probably say John who. If it, he may say that this is wrong, and only he knows for sure. I believe, from what I perceived at that time, he really, really, really considered it. He really considered, and I said to him, I'm like, I don't want to be the 800-pound gorilla. I said to Butch, I'm like, Butch, you will always be the 800-pound gorilla. I will answer always to you, but I want to be a series director. So either make me the series director of Danny Phantom or of Fairly Odd Parents. And if you can't do either of those things, I got to go take this gig at Disney for American Dragon. And I believe he gave it serious thought. And after lots and lots of serious thought, he was just like, I can't do it. And so with that, I very hesitantly and very with a heavy weight on my shoulders, bid farewell to Nickelodeon and to Fairly Odd Parents, and consequently to Danny Phantom, which to this day people assume that I had something to do with it. I had nothing to do with Danny Phantom. Never got to work on an episode. Butch would show me storyboards and Butch would show me stuff and go, "Oh wow, that's cool. That's great." But it never went beyond that. So I left Nickelodeon, and one of the main writers, when I had sort of gone around to everybody and started delivering the news that, hey, I'm leaving the show. One of the writers said to me, "How are they going to do this without you?" Because I had really become Butch's right hand. Bob Boyle was great at being the art director, and he was a co-producer by that time. Steve Marmel, of course, master storyteller, terrific head writer, great producer on the show. But I was the one in Butch's bullpen who could do all the stuff that Butch could do. I was, the other Butch. And so, yeah, one of the writers was like, "How are they going to do this without you?" Now, obviously, they went ahead and they did it without me. Um, you can determine for yourself how successful it was after I left. But so, this was all happening right around, I believe it was right around the time of Channel Chasers. And by the way, I feel like I gave them at least like 2 months notice. Say I'm leaving in 2 months. So in that amount of time, I'm going to um, train my replacement, who wound up being Dave Thomas, who did a great job. Uh, but in that whole time, they're all like, gearing up for my departure. And by golly, that is when my relationship with Butch Hartman changed significantly. I could tell he just, I'm sure, and again, I don't want to speak for him. He could tell you something completely different, but and by the way, this makes me feel good that he was sad that I left. I think he was bummed that I left, and I would have felt worse if me leaving would have been indifferent to. He would have been indifferent to it. So anyway, finally, after training my replacement, after tying up all loose ends, I depart from Nickelodeon Fairly Odd Parents. I go over to Disney, and I begin the process of directing a pilot for American Dragon, Jake Long. And boy, practically on the first day, I found myself going, "Oh, this is not going to go well." Because right out of the gate, they saddled me with a writer who was the head producer, and he was clearly going to be the 800-pound gorilla. And his immediate mandate was, I want this show to be like Seinfeld. Think about that for a second. The show is called American Dragon. It's about a kid who can change into a dragon and he fights other monsters in the city of New York. How do you mean Seinfeld? Now, I know that they wanted it to be funny. I know that they wanted it to have comedy in it. I got that part. But Seinfeld? And consequently, the script became very talky. All of the humor became very sort of, if you weren't following along with the current trends of that day, you weren't going to get it. And in addition to that, I redesigned the whole show. It looked very much like a lot of the designs that I showed you for Nightmare Hunters just now. The chief executive producer of Disney Television at the time absolutely hated my redesigns because I redesigned them to work with an action show. And he just kept looking at it and he's like, I don't like this. Why does it look like this? I think it should be more like this and that. And I would explain to him, I'm like, well, I designed it this way because I was inspired a lot by Batman, the animated series. I'm like, I've streamlined a lot of it so that it's easy to animate so that we get really good action out of it. He could not have cared less, hated my guts practically from the beginning. And so the whole time I'm there, I'm thinking to myself, this was a tremendous mistake. I'm like, but as long as I made this mistake, I am going to make it. And so and again, my initial thought was, I'm going to take all this material that I gathered from Nightmare Hunters, and I'm just going to, I'm going to funnel it into American Dragon. So for the next couple months, I did precisely that. The entire time butting heads with absolutely everybody who called themselves my boss. I made it was funny, but I also made the action really cool. I made the characterizations really cool. A lot of it was physical. And I put together, I was just like, you know what, this is not going to go anywhere. So I might as well make the pilot that I want to make. And between me and my editor, I boarded it all myself. I cut the animatic together with my editor, and she said to me, "This is one of the best pilots I've ever seen come out of Disney." And I was like, "Thank you. I like it too." So I made a really, really rockin' pilot for American Dragon, Jake Long. We put it together, added temporary sound effects and voices and all that stuff. Put it in front of the executives. They absolutely hated it, and I was fired. So I was out the door, and I was, of course, very, very distraught by the fact that I left I left a very stable career on the second most popular cartoon on planet Earth, and for this horrible experience. Now, I say horrible experience, but what wasn't horrible about the experience is for a couple of months, I had the experience of having carte blanche to make a pilot how I think it should be made. And you know what? I will trust the opinion of my editor over the suits at Disney any day. So, somebody in the sorry, I can't read your name, Voguish, whatever. Could they not have thought of any other? I know. Could they have not thought of another comedy to sort of draw from? I don't know. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't know. Any other show. But anyway, so so I'm fired. Now the good news is bless his heart, I now needed a job. And thankfully, Rob Renzetti and Fred Seibert, they were gearing up for My Life as a Teenage Robot. And Fred Seibert was basically like, yeah, you're not coming, you're not coming back on Fairly Odd Parents or Danny Phantom. He's like, but I'll talk to Rob Renzetti and see if he'll give you a job on My Life as a Teenage Robot. And I had been friendly with Rob anyway. Rob was very receptive, brought me on, and I had an absolute blast on that show. And as I said at the beginning of this really long stream, it was one of the best experiences of my life working on My Life as a Teenage Robot. However, now my feeling was, all right, I'm not going to be on Danny Phantom. I'm not going to be on American Dragon. I'm going back to Nightmare Hunters, and I am going to pitch this sucker. So, my whole philosophy was, well, I've had this idea long before I knew about either one of them. So screw it. I'm just going to go back to my material. I'm going to make my show, and I'm going to pitch it around. And that is when I started putting together the official Nightmare Hunters pitch Bible. Because my feeling was, at this point, not only am I going to compete with Danny Phantom and American Dragon, but I'm going to destroy them. Like I looked at my idea, and again, when I talk about how great this idea is, please understand, this is not me bragging. The idea had a life of its own. I refer to myself as the stenographer for Nightmare Hunters. I was just putting it all down. The world created itself. But I was just like, I'm sorry, but if I get Nightmare Hunters made and it's up against Danny Phantom and American Dragon, sorry guys, it's going to do better than either one of them. But again, honestly, I've never been someone who cares that much about competing. My feeling is, some people will like American Dragon, some people will like Danny Phantom, and some people will like Nightmare Hunters. There's room enough for all of us. So, I start pitching it around, and I had a few other show ideas that I wanted to pitch around, and so I had like 2 or 3 really strong ones that my agent had encouraged me to pitch around. And so I got a meeting at Warner Brothers, and my agent had said, no, don't do Nightmare Hunters, do the other 2. But I took all 3, and so I went to Warner Brothers, and the executive, I'm friendly with him, a guy named Dave Weeb, who was at Warner Brothers at the time. I took him Nightmare Hunters and 2 other shows. And I pitched him my 2 other shows, and he was kind of like, yeah, all right, those are nice. What else you got? And I showed him this, Nightmare Hunters, and I pitched it to him, and I gave him, I've got the elevator pitch, but then I've got the extended lore pitch that I sort of gave you guys just now. And he was looking at the artwork, looking at the storylines and all that stuff. And he was like, I like this a lot. This is something, this is not only a really great idea, this is on brand for Warner Brothers. Let's work on developing this. And so I walked out of that meeting, and of course he had to take it to his bosses, and they had to take it to their bosses, and they all had to do the thing. The thing that shows have to do in order to get made. But the point is, there was no question when I walked out of there that he was very, very enthusiastic about Nightmare Hunters. Oh, I just stumbled across his drawing, by the way. This is Lucy's mom and dad. The dad is not an actual superhero. That's Mr. Katsuda. He has a mattress store, and on his TV commercials, he dresses up as Mattress Man, who fights against overpriced mattresses. And her mom is a columnist, and nowadays she would be a blogger or something like that, but she does an advice column called Aunt Ask Mabel. So they're a quirky family, and again, they're a very close family. They love each other's eccentricities, and they all kind of feed off each other's eccentricities, and it's a relationship that I'm super proud of, because again, it's not one of these sort of one-dimensional, oh, Lucy's always brooding, blah blah blah. It's like, no, this is a family that, like, mom will get on the piano, Lucy will get out her violin. Oh, Lucy also plays the bagpipes. Um, and they'll all just have a good time. Here's another cool page. This is Rem using the Morpheus staff. That's some lore on how the Morpheus staff works. Anyway, so the meeting with Warner Brothers works well, and after a little while, after a few more meetings, after developing some stuff, one of the things they said to me was, "You need to pair up with a writer." And so the very first, it was the way animation was those days. They would never just give a show to someone without any script writing experience. And so they're like, you need to team up with a writer. And so the very first person I thought of, and the person who wound up becoming the closest thing I've ever had to a creative partner in my career, I went to Eric Trueheart, and that's a name you should all be familiar with because he was one of the main writers for Invader Zim. He and I sold a show together. He and I conceived of stuff together, and we worked together on compositing the pitch Bible for Nightmare Hunters. So after coming up with the usual rigmarole of we had to turn in a bunch of scripts, we had to turn in a pilot, we had to turn in all this stuff. Warner Brothers commissioned me as the creator to do, and I'm going to keep this moving, but that's the check from Warner Brothers saying we want to develop Nightmare Hunters. And this is the Nightmare Hunters contract. And you can see it's very, very thick and has a lot of complicated language in it. But the one language that I made sure it had in it was that if they don't make this show after 5 years, the rights revert back to me. And the reason I was able to negotiate that is because I'd had all this success with Fairly Odd Parents and with my own pilot, the Tantrum. So anyway, we negotiated the contract. Eric, bless his heart, enthusiastically agreed to come on board. We worked together. We put together a bunch of scripts, including a really great pilot. It was an absolute blast working with the guy. He and I are still good friends, by the way. We don't see each other because he still lives in Los Angeles and I live on the East Coast. But he and I are still really, really friendly with one another. Yeah, here's more contracts and stuff. And I had to say, I wound up later on getting rid of the agency that represented me. But at the time, it's the kind of thing when you are handed literally like 400-page long documents like that, you really sort of need someone who speaks that language. So anyway, Eric and I, the Warner Brothers love us. They love us as a pair. They love the show. All kinds of great hot mojo behind Nightmare Hunters. And so we're putting it together. We're pushing. We get as far as we get given the green light to do a pilot animatic. Now, that is not the same as getting a pilot. It means we can do the pilot animatic. Now, it was right around this time that we started getting notes from Warner Brothers saying things like, well, what if we did this? And how about if we did that? And how would you feel if we changed this? And how about if we change that? And we're just like, oh, please just let us make our pilot. If we make our pilot and you don't fall over backwards in love with it, then we can talk about changing stuff. But so we had been told in no uncertain terms, we are doing a pilot, but we're doing a pilot animatic, but there's tons of paperwork that needs to be done. They were like, oh, we're gonna pick who your animation crew is and who gets to storyboard it and all that. And I'm just like, oh, no. I get to pick who storyboards it. I get to pick who who does the character turnarounds and does all that stuff. And so again, even though Warner Brothers was really supportive, and Dave Weeb and Kim Christensen were two of the executives that were 100% on our side. From upper tiers, we were getting some really scary notes about changes they wanted. And so, by way of kind of heading them off at the pass, was before we got our official green light to do the pilot animatic, I ran to my friend Louis Del Carmen, who was the storyboard supervisor, supervising director, and storyboard artist on Invader Zim. And I loved his work. And I had been telling him about what had been going on with pitching this thing. And he really loved Nightmare Hunters. And I said to him, I'm like, look, we're almost certainly going to get to do an animatic. I can't necessarily guarantee you that this is going to happen, but you're the person that I want to storyboard this thing. Would you consider doing some samples that we can put into the animatic to help convince them to just let me run this the way I know it needs to be run? And he was like, absolutely. Like, not even a bit of hesitation. No coercion, no nothing. He had looked it over. And Louis Del Carmen was one of the people to say to me, and again, this is not me bragging about me. This is me bragging about the show that came to life under my watch. Um, he said to me, he's like, this is the next Harry Potter. Like, this is the next Matrix. This is the next blah, blah, blah. This has so much potential. So he very enthusiastically agreed to storyboard the pilot for me. And this is Louis Del Carmen's storyboard for Nightmare Hunters. And he did this wonderful, wonderful, beautifully rendered, detailed work based on the script that Eric and I did together. And he did it all for free. In his spare time. That's was just one of the coolest things ever. The fact that, because, by the way, Louis Del Carmen is one of those people that studios fought over. And the fact that he would take time out of his days and weekends, he had kids, to do my storyboard for me was just, it was the greatest thing ever. And the reason I had him storyboard it instead of me was because, and I'm always going to be grateful for this bit of advice too. After the Tantrum had premiered, I was very, very dead set on doing everything for the Tantrum by myself. Like, I storyboarded it, I directed it, I did as much stuff by myself as I possibly could. And my friend and fellow coworker from Wild Thornberry days and from Invader Zim days, one of the big board artists for Invader Zim, Ian Graham, who is just having all kinds of success right now, and I'm super happy for him, and he's still just one of my good friends. He said to me after getting the Tantrum pilot done, he's like, if your show gets picked up, don't try and do it all yourself. Get other people to help. And at first, I remember being a little put off by it, thinking, well, what, did I not do a good enough job? But as the years went by between the Tantrum and Nightmare Hunters, I was like, he's absolutely right. I should not try and do this all myself. It occurred to me that what makes a good producer is not someone who tries to do everything himself, but someone who finds people who's better at the job than he is and brings them in to do it. So another person that I brought in to help me out with storyboards, her name's Heather Chavez. She went on to do some great stuff at Disney too, but she also came out of the woodwork and offered to do storyboards for me for free, just so that I could put this in front of the executives, shoot the animatic the way I wanted it to be shot, and have our chance at making the show that we knew, would be a success. Well, just after everyone turns in all their storyboards and we've spent all this time working on it at Warner Brothers, everything that wasn't Batman or Scooby-Doo got canned. They had a huge switch in upper executive echelons, and basically everything that was in development got shelved, got canned, got kicked to the curb, and um, it was it was in a tie between which was going to get made, Nightmare Hunters or Lunatics Unleashed. And Warner Brothers, of course, because they owned Lunatics Unleashed, lock, stock, and barrel, dropped Nightmare Hunters and went with Lunatics Unleashed. So my big bid into doing what I consider now to be, and I'm sorry, I still consider this to be, I consider this to be my magnum opus. Make no mistake. Every single cartoon that we're doing at Fountain's Pen Cartoons, I'm in love with. They are my children. I love them all equally. But this is my Lord of the Rings. This is my Star Wars. This is my, this is the story that I have always wanted to tell. This is the story that I was meant to tell more than anything else. And by the way, let me make something abundantly clear. If you love Lunatics Unleashed, bless your heart. Good for you. No harm, no foul. By the way, Danny Phantom is a great show. By the way, American Dragon had some great stuff in it. And by the way, I have receipts for this on social media. For season 2 of American Dragon, they went back to the stuff that I had created for the show and said, really, we should be looking at this stuff. So anyway, my point is, I got nothing against any of those shows, but I thought my show deserved a chance as well. So again, knowing that I now had a deal in place where, okay, well, in a few years, the rights are going to revert back to me, so I can actively pitch this around to other studios. And I pitched it around to other studios. I went to Disney, where I now had connections. I went to Nickelodeon. I went to other places. And I remember at one of the studios, they were like, we would be interested in this, but only if you change Lucy into a boy. Because they said girls don't watch cartoons. Thank you, animation industry circa, I don't know, I want to say 2001 or 2002. Thank you for that bit of wisdom. Girls don't like cartoons. And here's the thing. I've been approached with stuff like, hey, we need to have this more toy appeal. I'm like, no problem. We need this to have this. We need this to have that. I'm like, no problem, no problem. But when it came to Lucy needs to be a boy, I was just like, no, 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 no. That's not the show. It's just not the show. And by the way, you're wrong. Because here's the thing I would always run into when I would pitch shows, and I would drive my agent nuts with this, because she would say to me, she's like, you got to be prepared to tell them what your target demographic is. Who is your target audience? And I would always say in the pitch meetings, when somebody would say, who's your target audience? I would say to them, people who want to be entertained. That's it. That's my demographic. I'm not ever necessarily going after boys or girls or this age group or that age group. I'm going after people who want to be entertained for a little while, and maybe entertained by something that has a few layers to it and that has some substance to it, that's not just filler. That's my target audience, but they don't want to hear that. So I would pitch it around, and those were the types of reactions that I was getting for a long time. And so for a long time, I was just like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to step away from this for a while. But then it came out that at the time, Tokyo Pop Publishing was doing all kinds of great stuff. And Tokyo Pop Publishing had an animation division. And so Tokyo Pop Publishing said, we love this idea. How about you bring it over? And we started out as a manga, as a book. And if the book does well, then we'll talk animation. I got absolutely no problem with that. So by this point, I was working on Teenage Robot, and from there I went on to things like Yin Yang Yo and Hero on Away. I was too busy to illustrate a book. And by the way, I don't consider myself a comic book artist, and hadn't considered myself a comic book artist for a long time. I was never good at panel layout. So I was like, we can take the script that we use from Warner Brothers, but let's find another artist to do that. And this was the cover art for Tokyo Pop, done by Andrew Dickman, who went on to do a really cool, faithful job illustrating the manga, and again got as far as finished inks. But by the time that got finished, right at the tail end of that, Tokyo Pop Publishing went through a huge upset, and suddenly their animation division closed. Yeah, Andrew Dickman has worked on a lot of different animated shows. He's another person who pitches a lot of different stuff. He's been around, very very talented illustrator. I don't think I've ever met him in person. But so anyway, so Tokyo Pop decides after a while, like, look, we're having financial problems. We're cutting this. We're just sticking with things, with properties that people are already buying. So again, once again, Nightmare Hunters was the victim of nobody really wanting to take a chance on something brand new. Pardon me for a second, everybody. I really need some coffee, because this has been going on for over 2 hours. Thank you, by the way, for everyone who's in the chat. Thank you for everyone who's been sticking around. Are you not entertained? I'm hoping I'm telling the story well. Anyway, there's a lot of lore here, and there's a lot of context. So anyway, Nightmare Hunters finally, from what I can tell, breathes its last at Tokyo Pop Publishing. And yes, I took it around to a few other places, and yes, I took it to other comic publishers, and I took it to, I ran into someone at a party who worked at HBO who was like, I want to do this live action. That never obviously happened. But yeah, after that, interest in Nightmare Hunters pretty much fizzled out. Now, I had sort of said to myself, well, shoot, I put so much work into this. And of course, now, these characters are like family to me. They're my babies. It's this world that I have birthed. And by the way, in this time, I'm already, Eric and I are pitching shows together. I'm pitching shows with other people. I'm pitching shows that I've come up with on my own. By the way, some of those things are things you're going to see on Fountain's Pen Cartoons. They're all gangbusters. But in the back of my mind, I'm still just going, man, Nightmare Hunters was so good. It needs to be out there. But I was just like, I've dried it all up. Nobody wants anything to do with it. And for years and years, I just sat on it thinking to myself, gosh, it's a shame that this isn't getting out there. Every now and then I would toy with the idea of doing it as a comic and just putting it as a comic online. But, again, when you're a series director or a storyboard artist or an animation director, the last thing you want to do when you get done with your day's work is come home and draw some more. Or at least that's the last thing I wanted to do. So anyway, after that final defeat, Nightmare Hunters, all the material I had gathered from it had just started piling up in boxes. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to show off some of this stuff. One of the things that I'll save that for later. So so yeah, all this material just sat around in boxes, and for years and years, I just sat around going, it's a shame that this is just never going to see the light of day. Maybe someday, my nephew is a cartoonist, or maybe my daughter someday will want to do something with this. But for now, I'm done. And I did kind of resign myself to it. I was kind of like, you know what? I took my shot. I got further than most people ever get to go. I'm grateful. I've proved myself in the animation industry. I got nothing else to prove. But and it was right around this time. By this time, my wife and I had moved from Los Angeles to New York, as I had said at the beginning of this whole long tale. um, I had sort of considered the pilot to Rick and Morty to be my swan song to the animation industry. I would still freelance, and I would do, I would do pilots for people and stuff like that, but I was never really going to like pour myself into anything else anymore. We were moving to New York. We were going to start a whole new life there. And a couple years after being in New York, we were like, well, it's time to have a baby. So that to me was the real sort of kicker. I'm like, all right, we're gonna have a baby. My wife is the one who's paying all the bills, so I'm gonna be a stay-at-home dad. Um, yes, I will take on freelance work when it occurs, but I'm not going to go. I'm not going to pitch shows around. And it was probably just before my wife got pregnant with our daughter that I actually pitched my very 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 last show to Nickelodeon, a little show called Flotchy Nachi and Tip, which you can see on this channel as soon as you're done watching this video. Um, and New York greater than I love it. Liked living in New York much more than I liked living in LA. Yes. That being said, I met my wife in Los Angeles, and she's a native of Los Angeles, so I owe Los Angeles a lot. I had a great time when I lived there, but New York is just kind of amazing. Um, so yeah, my very last show, I pitched it over the phone um, to Mary Harrington from of Invader Zim fame. I pitched her Flotchy, Nachi, and Tip because they were doing another incubator program. And by the way, I'm still friends with Mary. This nudge, like Mary Harrington, as far as I'm concerned, is a great person. My relationship with her has always been great. But she was like, "This is not what Nickelodeon is looking for right now. What else you got?" And I said to her in the nicest possible way that I could, I was like, "You know what? Nickelodeon knows what I have. I've pitched them everything I've ever come up with. So if you guys ever change your mind, you come see me." But it was at the end of that phone call that I was like, you know what? We're gonna have a baby. I don't even want to do this anymore. It's like, yes, I will do it for extra money because we live in New York and it's expensive here, but I'm not gonna pour myself into anything anymore. And that's exactly what I did. I made my main focus um, being a support system for my wife. When the baby came along, I was a stay-at-home dad, and that for the next many years is what I focused on. Um, cut to kid is in school, kid is around less, kid doesn't need me as much, and around this time, I start looking at what is turning into the independent animation revolution. And this was about 4 years ago that I started to really become aware of. Oh wow, look at all this cool stuff people are just doing on YouTube and stuff like that. And um, and I just started observing it, and I started thinking to myself, oh wow, this is cool. Maybe that's the type of thing I could do. But I was looking at things where it was people just doing really short gag cartoons, and I'm like, yeah, that's a kind of thing I can pull off. And so that's if you look back at the earliest stuff on this channel, it's those really just crappy, quick, black and white gag cartoons, and they're fine. But I certainly didn't think about doing something like Nightmare Hunters. But after about 3 years of that, and when my daughter is starting to get to be around 7, 8, 9 years old, that's when it first occurred to me. It's like, you know what, maybe I should bring together a group of people, because by this time I had become active on social media enough to realize that there were tons and tons and tons of people out there who wanted to break into animation, but they didn't have anything to get their hands dirty on. They didn't have any projects, and nobody was hiring, and there just wasn't anything going on. And that's when I had the idea. It's like, well, I don't have anything to offer other than my own experience. So I'm just going to shout out into the void on social media and say, hey, if anybody out there wants to join me and make cartoons just for funsies, hit me up in the DMs and we'll put something together. And I honestly did not expect to get anybody kind of shouting back. But the next thing I know, my DMs are packed with, 40, 50, 60, 100 different people. The next thing I know, I've got someone saying to me, and he's the head of production here at Fountains Pen Productions, Tiger Singh. He says to me, "Hey, look, I don't want to draw or animate." He's like, "But I'm really good at managing things." And I'm like, "Oh, bless your heart, because that's what I'm terrible at." So he volunteered to basically run the studio part of it, and we decided together we will run all this through Discord. We will be the island of misfit animators. We will bring in everyone who wants to get experience but doesn't have anywhere to practice, and we will start making stuff here. And of course, the first thing we dove into, because it was a very, very simple idea, was Flotchy, Notchy, and Tip. And after even just a few months of getting everybody kind of together and working and experimenting and seeing how the process worked, because that was my whole thing, was I didn't even know if this was going to work, like, at all. So I didn't want to bite off more than we could chew. So I'm like, we got to start with something really, really simple. And that's why we did Flotchy, Notchy, and Tip. But once we started getting into Flotchy, Notchy, and Tip, I was like, wow, this is actually kind of working out pretty well. Maybe we can branch off into doing other things. And so that's when I finally blew the dust off of all of my Nightmare Hunters material. And that is why I'm making this video here today, because we are making the pilot that I've always wanted to make. I mean, again, I've always wanted to make all these pilots, but I consider this one to be the one. This is the show that you should have had 20 years ago. This is the show that should have been competing with Danny Phantom and American Dragon and a bunch of other shows. This is the show that you should have had 20 years ago. But this time we're making it, and there's absolutely nobody whispering in our ear. There's nobody getting in our way. There's nobody getting in the way of us making it good. And and of course, I've got all of this pre-made material for us to work from. But that being said, we are taking it in different directions, and we're letting it grow and evolve. We're letting it be organic the way it always has been. And once again, everyone who looks at it has the same reaction that probably you folks did. Because if you're here, I'm assuming you've seen bits of it too, and you had the same reaction. Everyone seems to think that this has massive amounts of potential, and I do too. I have never for a minute stopped thinking to myself, this could be really great. And so we are making it. We are in the process of making it. If you poke through the different videos on this channel, some of them are in shorts, some of them are in regular videos. I do give sneak peeks of some of the animation that we've got going, and I give sneak peeks about how things are developing. And I have put up posts before where I've put up artwork in development. That brings us to my big announcement, because I got to start wrapping this up because we've been at this for 2 hours, which is great, by the way. Thank you for everyone who showed up. Thank you for everyone who's been listening. Here's the big announcement. If you want to see more of the material that I sort of teased throughout the course of this video, I have finally set up a Patreon page for Fountains Pen Cartoons. So if you go to www.patreon.com/fountainspencartoons, we have a page, and right now there's a paywall. We don't have tiers, we don't have any of that stuff, but you can pay, and that money will go to support the channel, help us continue to do what we've been doing. Because as I said at the beginning, thus far none of us are making any money. And by the way, when and if, assuming this channel ever gets monetized in any capacity, the YouTube channel, I will never keep a dime of that to myself. That will be going to everybody else who's been with the program. So by paywall, I just mean you have to pay to see the stuff, and then the money will go towards the channel. But for if this YouTube channel ever makes any money, I will not be keeping a dime of it. It will always go to, or at least rather, I will be the last person paid. You know, only when everybody else is paid and happy will I even think about taking a dime. But if you are super, super, super interested in supporting the channel and want to do that, go to Patreon, go to Fountains Pen Cartoons on Patreon. And if you give the suggested, I think, donation of whatever it is, you will be able to see tons and tons of the development artwork, not just for this cartoon, but for the other cartoons that we've done on Fountain's Pen Cartoons. So that's the big announcement. We have a Patreon page. It's going to develop more as time goes on. I'm going to put up more incentives, more perks, more stuff like that. But for now, there is something there that you can go see. So some other stuff I wanted to share. One of the things that was happening at the time, that I was developing Nightmare Hunters. This is just a piece of artwork that I'm particularly proud of. And I should point out the person I've always famously said I am bad at color. I did not color this. One of the people that I brought in really early on in the development of the show, her name is I knew her as Holly Kim. She's now Holly Almaguire. She was also in the animation industry for a long time, and she did all of the color work for all of my pitch material. These are this is how exact I got with my character model sheets, showing them from every conceivable angle. And again, of course, I did turnarounds. Everybody does turnarounds. That's not a big deal. But I also did where did those pages go? Yeah, here's just front view Lucy. The version of Lucy that we're doing now, by the way, is aged up. I think she was originally supposed to be around 13 or 14. Now she's going to be 16. Where to go? Oh, here's Rem coming into the real world. That's how he does it. Where did the thing go that I wanted? Where's that thing that I wanted? Oh well. At the time, one of the sort of bizarre things about pitching shows to network was you needed to do whatever you could prior to making your pilot. You really just needed to bend over backwards to help them see your world, because like I've said this before, there's been a handful of executives that I've worked with in the past that were just nothing but great to me. Fred Cyber being one of them, Kim Christensen being another one, David Weeb being another one. They are out there, but there are other executives who just can't picture the thing in their heads. So you have to do whatever you can to make it easy for them to envision what you're bringing to the table. So again, for the sake of the animators, I even did like their skeletal structure, so that there was no question on how to, how their bodies moved and stuff like that. So again, this is why all of this just exhaustive material. And the other thing that people would do is they would put together little packages of stuff. There's ceiling shot of Lucy's room. We're using this in the pilot that we are creating currently. So along with pitch materials, people would put together packages with T-shirts and baskets of soap and stuff like that. Like they would put together whole little care packages in the hopes, not just of buttering up the executives, but in just sort of generally giving them a better instinct for what it was you were trying to pitch. And one of the things that I did was put together the Nightmare Hunters soundtrack. Remember CDs? I burned a CD of songs that I felt sort of fit the genre of what we were going for. Of course, I've got Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics, Darkness by Peter Gabriel, Lonely in Your Nightmare by Duran Duran, All Through the Night by Cyndi Lauper, Marble Halls by Enya, Dreams by the Cranberries, The Great Beyond by REM, Welcome to My Nightmare by Alice Cooper, and then possibly my most fundamentally this is what the show feels like to me song, Pet by A Perfect Circle. A Perfect Circle in general, I felt like sort of really captured the vibe I was looking for. But yeah, I put together this CD so that hopefully they, on the off chance that they would bother listening to it, they would help them sort of envision what was coming down their way. I bought him a bunch of dream catchers and gave those out. Um, this is just all of the visual material. The oh, this is, yeah, okay. This is the pilot script. Um, oh, this is kind of interesting. Now watch, I won't be able to find it again. Um, Man, I put a lot of work into this. Yeah. Um, this is the Nightmare Hunters font, which I nicknamed Thorn. And I think I said at the beginning, this logo that Holly Almaguer eventually did the color for too. It's supposed to be the eye that's half open, half closed, representing both the waking world and the dream world, and yada yada yada. So again, just the amount. This is why they call it development hell, ladies and gentlemen, because you would jump through all of these hoops, and you would develop something. We probably spent 2 or 3 years developing the Nightmare Hunters series, only to have it passed off or passed on in favor of Lunatics Unleashed. So, again, it's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about independent animation, and why, yes, please support our channel, but support independent animation in general, because, this is the way. This is the way cartoons get great again, in my opinion, because for far too long, artists have had to thoroughly just bend the knee to people without a creative vision, who don't care about storytelling, who don't care about art. They care about making product. And are any of us getting rich off this? No, of course not. But what we are doing is bringing animation back as an art form, as opposed to just this thing to sell Happy Meal toys. For a long time, when people would ask, what do you do for a living, I would say to them, I'm like, I sell Happy Meal toys. That's my job, because that's what that's what our purpose for doing all this work was all about. Well, that has finally changed, and it has changed in the form of independent animation. I think I've gone on about this long enough. Let me just say, let me give a big shout out to everybody at Fountain's Pen Cartoons, from production to voice to the artists to all of the support crew. There's no way we would even be attempting a show of this level of ambitiousness if it weren't for the fact that they have proven that they can do it. And over the upcoming weeks, months, however long it takes, I will be teasing stuff and putting stuff out and showing little bits. But it's kind of one of the big debates about this, is I kind of want to save the very best stuff for when it's actually released. So please, 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 show your support, because beyond me, there is a group of people at Fountain's Pen Productions who are working simply for the love of the craft. They're scattered all around the globe, and they're people who are just wildly enthusiastic about what we're doing. And we're not just doing Nightmare Hunters, we're doing a bunch of different stuff that I wish I could show you bits of it now, because just trust me, we are bringing some really great stuff your way. And by the way, if you haven't watch season 1. There's great stuff in there. And the whole goal here is to build this into something where we are taking pitches from other people, where we're helping bring other people's ideas to life. So please, please, please show your support for this channel. Get the word out. Tell your friends. Follow us on all the various social medias, like, share, subscribe, all those things. Because, like I said, we don't have a Kickstarter campaign. We don't have a celebrity behind us. All we have is you. But by the way, I'm delighted with you. One of the things that, when I first started the channel, one of the things you get bombarded with are people saying, here's how you can grow to X number of followers overnight. And there's all these bizarre tricks to, getting a gazillion followers overnight. And I'm like, I don't want that. I want people who are actually invested in us. Because one of the valuable things I am loving about this whole indie animation sphere is that we can have a relationship with you, the viewers. Without you, there is no us. So please know that you too are appreciated. And the reason I'm asking for your help is not for me, it's for all of us. I want us all to be a part of this. And I always want this to sort of be a community where uh, our relationship with the people we're trying to entertain is active and not passive. So, please help spread the word. We are, as far as indie animation goes, there aren't too many more that are as indie as us. We've gotten no real sort of press or anything like that. No, nobody seems, apart from me, nobody's lining up to sort of shout about us. So please help us grow and help us evolve. And we will do our very best to reward you with some really, really, really cool animation and cartoons. Um, on that note, I think I should probably wrap this up. Like I said, um, go to patreon.com and go to Fountains Pen Cartoons if you want to start, if you want to get in on the ground floor of supporting us in a financial way. Go there. Otherwise, again, what we need more than anything now are eyeballs to help us get to our required amount of watch hours, which is precisely why I did this stream today. And it's precisely why I do the episodes of F bombs. I get no joy out of looking at my face on the screen. The second we get monetized, you are going to see a lot less of me. But I need to do these videos because most of the cartoons that we make are only about 3 minutes long, and we have to meet that requirement. So, I really, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I did my best to make this entertaining. Thank you very much for everyone who showed up. I know that everybody couldn't stay from the very beginning to the very end, but for those of you who are there, for those of you who have come and gone, for those of you who are watching this for the first time on the channel, thank you, thank you, thank you. I simply cannot express my gratitude with enough vehemence. You are very much appreciated. You are part of this with us. So please come along the journey with us. And please, be watching on all of my socials for news on Nightmare Hunters. Guys, it is going to be amazing. So I think that's where I'm going to end up this stream. Chat real quick. Is there anything I've missed? Is there anything I should talk about before I go? I'm not seeing anything jump up. All right, I made the big announcement. Thank you for reminding me about the big announcement. The big announcement is that we have a Patreon page. So, and like I said, if you go to that Patreon page, patreon.com/fountainspencartoons, you can become a member and you can see all of the development artwork, not just for Nightmare Hunters, but for all of the cartoons that we've done here at Fountains Pen Cartoons. So everybody, once again, thank you so much for tuning in. Please, please, please spread the word. Once again, I cannot thank my crews at Fountains Pen Productions enough for being a part of this journey with me. Again, I see this as one big community. Me, you, the crews, all of us. Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for believing in what we're trying to build here and help us make the world a better place through cartoons. And on that note, everybody, thank you again for tuning in. I'll see you on the next one. Zigga zigga, party people.